The letter arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, tucked between bills and grocery coupons, the kind of envelope most people would open without thinking. But when Daniel Harper saw the return address from a law office he didn't recognize, his stomach tightened. He almost tossed it aside. Life had been heavy enough already. At 38, Daniel was a single father trying to hold the pieces of a life that had fallen apart 2 years earlier. His wife, Emily, had passed away suddenly after a short illness, leaving him alone to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Since then, every day felt like a balancing act, working long shifts at a small auto repair shop, helping Lily with homework, packing lunches, and pretending he wasn't constantly afraid of failing her. Most nights, when Lily was asleep, Daniel sat quietly at the kitchen table staring at Emily's old coffee mug, wondering how someone could miss another person so much it physically hurt. The letter sat unopened in front of him. Finally, he tore it open. Inside was a short message explaining that Daniel had inherited a property from a distant relative he barely remembered, his late great-uncle Arthur. Daniel blinked. An inheritance? That didn't make sense. The letter included an address in a small rural town about 2 hours away. According to the attorney, the property was an old mansion that had been abandoned for years. Daniel actually laughed out loud. A mansion? From a relative he'd met maybe twice as a kid. It sounded like a mistake. But curiosity got the better of him. The following Saturday, he loaded Lily into his old pickup truck and drove out to see the place. The road grew narrower as they got closer, surrounded by tall oak trees that leaned over the asphalt like silent watchers. When they finally reached the address, Daniel slowed the truck. And then he saw it. The mansion stood behind rusted iron gates, massive and silent. It had once been beautiful. White columns, wide windows, a wraparound porch, but time had not been kind. Paint peeled from the walls, vines crawled up the sides, and several windows were boarded shut. Lily leaned forward from the passenger seat. "Dad, we own that." Daniel scratched his head. "I guess we do." They pushed the creaky gate open and walked up the cracked stone path. The front door groaned loudly when Daniel shoved it open. Dust filled the air. Inside, the mansion felt frozen in time. Old furniture sat beneath white sheets, chandeliers hung crookedly from the ceiling, and the wooden floor creaked under every step. Lily spun slowly in the giant foyer. "It's like a castle." Daniel chuckled. "Yeah, a haunted castle." He assumed the place would probably be sold for whatever little money it was worth. There was no way he could afford to repair something this big. Still, something about the house pulled at him. For the next few weeks, Daniel started visiting on weekends. Sometimes Lily came with him, sometimes she stayed with a neighbor while he worked. He cleaned debris, boarded broken windows, and hauled out piles of junk. At first, he didn't know why he kept coming back. But slowly, the mansion started to feel alive again. One afternoon, while clearing out a dusty hallway, Daniel noticed something strange. The wall at the end of the corridor sounded hollow when he knocked on it. He frowned. Old houses had plenty of quirks, but this felt different. He pushed aside a large wooden bookshelf leaning against the wall. Behind it was a faint outline, like a door that had been sealed up. Daniel's curiosity sparked. Using a crowbar from his toolbox, he carefully pried at the paneling. After several minutes of effort, the wood cracked open. And there it was. A narrow staircase hidden behind the wall. Cold air drifted down from the darkness below. "Okay, that's creepy," Daniel muttered. But curiosity won. He grabbed a flashlight and slowly stepped onto the staircase. The wood creaked under his weight as he descended. At the bottom was a small basement room he hadn't seen on any of the property documents. The room was surprisingly clean. In the center sat a wooden table. And on the table were boxes. Lots of boxes. Daniel opened the first one. Inside were envelopes filled with letters. Some were decades old. As he read them, his confusion turned to quiet amazement. The letters were from people all over the town. Single mothers thanking someone for paying their rent. Students thanking someone for covering their college books. Families expressing gratitude for anonymous help during hard times. Every letter was addressed to the same person. Arthur Harper. Daniel's great-uncle. He opened another box. Inside were notebooks filled with names, addresses, and handwritten notes. Daniel sat down slowly. His uncle hadn't been a wealthy businessman or a famous figure. But from what Daniel could tell, Arthur had spent his life quietly helping people. Paying medical bills. Fixing houses. Helping strangers survive difficult moments. No publicity. No recognition. Just kindness. Daniel swallowed hard. He had barely known the man. Yet somehow, Arthur had changed hundreds of lives. And then Daniel noticed something else. One notebook had a final page. At the top, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "If you're reading this, Daniel, the house is yours now." Daniel's chest tightened. The note continued. "I watched from a distance after Emily passed. I saw how hard you worked to take care of Lily. You remind me of the kind of man this world needs more of." Daniel blinked back tears. The staircase wasn't built to hide money, the note said. It was built to hide something more important. Proof that kindness matters. Daniel wiped his eyes. At the bottom of the page were a few final words. "Help people when you can. That's the real inheritance." For a long time, Daniel just sat there in silence. That night, he brought Lily down to the hidden room. She listened quietly as he explained what her great-uncle had done. Her eyes widened. So, he was like a secret superhero. Daniel laughed softly. "Yeah, something like that." Lily thought for a moment. "Are we gonna keep doing it?" Daniel looked around the small room filled with letters from people whose lives had been changed. And suddenly, the exhaustion he'd carried for 2 years felt a little lighter. "Yeah," he said gently. "I think we are." The mansion slowly transformed over the next year. Daniel repaired rooms one at a time. But instead of turning it into something fancy, he turned it into something meaningful. A place where people in trouble could come for help. A place where kids could get free tutoring. A place where struggling families could find food and support. Word spread through the town. People began calling it Harper House. But Daniel never put his name on anything. Because that wasn't the point. One evening, as the sun set behind the old oak trees, Daniel sat on the mansion's porch with Lily. Children played in the yard while volunteers carried boxes of donated food inside. Lily leaned against him. "Dad, yeah, I think Uncle Arthur would be proud." Daniel looked out at the house. At the people laughing. At the life filling a place that had once been forgotten. He smiled softly. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think he would be."